Hello, welcome to Illinois Stories. I'm Mark McDonald in Nauvoo. We meet a lot of collectors on this program. Some people collect cars or stamps. This is the first time we've ever met somebody who collects log cabins. If you come to Nauvoo, you can relive history by staying in them. Well, Dave Hartle, for about the past 10 years, you've been collecting and building a log cabin village here in Nauvoo. And what I find so interesting about this is, log cabins are appealing and a lot of people have log cabins, but most of them are new. Most of yours are maybe 150 years old.
Yeah.
Isn't it? It's incredible.
Our oldest cabin is 1839.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're old pioneer log cabins, most of them, all but two.
Mm-hmm.
And so we collected them and brought them here. We number the logs, take them apart, disassemble them, load on a trailer, and bring them here.
Yeah.
And then the funnest part about it to me is discovering the old cabins and go out and explore around the cabins. You find all kinds of old antiques underground and just feel the history that was there, because these cabins are usually out in the middle of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
In Wyoming or Utah. At that time, there was nothing there.
Yeah.
And of course, but Indians and buffalo.
Yeah, right.
And so we go out and drive around, find the old cabins, and contact the ranchers and see which ones they want to get rid of.
The one we're looking at here, I wanted to start with this one because while this is not an old cabin,
No.
this was the first one that you bought and you brought here, and you put it together, and you and your wife lived here. This was where you first lived. So let's walk up to it, and you can show us some of the properties of it and the way it was put together, if you don't mind. Where was this cabin, Dave?
This cabin was in Heber, Utah.
Heber,
And
Utah.
I was just driving through, and it was parked on the side of the road, all erected, and they had a for sale sign on it. A guy by the name of Tim built it, all by hand. It's spruce pine, and he would put the butt end of the log at one end and flip-flop them, and he did all the work with the chainsaw. It's called a Swedish cope. They sit on top of each other, and he did all the hewing. He hewed it by hand.
Yeah.
And,
And you saw it, it was for sale. You just drove by it and it was for sale and you wanted it.
yes.
Okay. Now, here's the other thing that people should know. All of these cabins, these are for lodging. People stay here in Nauvoo if they want to stay for a night or a week or however long. They could stay at a hotel or they could stay at your log cabins.
Yes.
And what's nice about this is even though some of these cabins are very old, you have amenities inside them, electricity and air conditioning and stuff like
You
that.
have to make them comfortable for
Well,
people.
sure you do. Let's go inside this one. Can we go inside and
Sure.
take a look?
Come on in.
Okay, now on the inside you can see those big. Did you say spruce? Is that what that is?
Spruce
Those
pine.
big spruce.
Yes.
Okay, pine. And you can see the inside. Wow, this is really spacious. Very nice. I can see how you and your wife could live here very comfortably. This is neat.
We enjoyed it.
I'll bet you did. I'll bet you did. It's got all the amenities. I think what I'd like to do is go back, if you could, take us back to the loft area because that's really, really nifty.
It's
You can
got
sleep a couple in here,
a bathroom there, a half bath here.
bath off to the side.
They all have wireless internet. They have
Do
satellite
they
TV.
really? Satellite TV and wireless internet in your 1850s log cabin. Okay, now this, like you said, this is one of the newer ones, but it's got a sleeping loft and a nook there, bedroom nook there, bunk beds.
It's kind
Over
of like
here.
a bonding cabin. You're going to have to bond with your kids because you're going to be
Yeah.
up as late as they're going to be up because there's no walls.
Right, it's an open space. It's really neat.
So we just made them so they can pack families in because a lot of families come to visit Nauvoo.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so families that like togetherness, they're going to like your cabins.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we just saw one of your newer ones, but the Van Fleet house here, the cabin here, this is really old, isn't it?
Yes, it was built in the late 1800s. It's not as old as some of them.
Mm-hmm. And where did you find it?
I found it between Lyman, Wyoming and Mountain View, Wyoming, out in the middle of nowhere. We had to drive through lots of sagebrush fields and across creeks to get to it.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing was out there but a few other outbuildings by it.
Yeah.
It was the Van Vliet homestead. They homesteaded when they opened up the Wyoming homesteads in the late 1800s. and they went and homesteaded 160 acres and then later more land.
Who was Van Fleet?
John Van Vliet was the son of Charles Van Vliet. Charles lived here in Bridgeport, I believe, Illinois, and in 1858 they went out west. And first they went to Circleville, Utah, a little tiny valley in the mountains. There were a lot of Ute Indians there. When they pulled up their wagon train they were in, they put the wagon trains in a circle, and the Ute Indians attacked them. The Van Vliet's wagon was full of flour, so the Indians were in the wagon cutting open the sacks of flour.
Yeah.
And so they ended up having a battle, but a couple of people got killed, and a couple Indians got killed. John was only 6 years old at the time. His 2-year-old brother got killed and mutilated. And so it was quite a story. That was the beginning of the Utah Black Hawk War, which lasted for 7 years.
So let's go inside now. So John later, after he became an adult, that's when he built this cabin. Is that
Yes.
right? Okay.
He was 44 years old when he built this. First he went to Circleville, but then when they opened up the homesteads, he came to Wyoming and settled there. And this is all weathered. It's a natural weather cabin. It's got square notch corners for the corners. It was pretty much fallen down because the bulls, the biggest and meanest bulls, stayed in this, and they would fight in here in the wintertime. And so they were worried about it falling on the bulls, so they gave it to me. All these are the original logs. This is the original wood that came off of the logs, and that's how it sat on there. And then it was covered with dirt. The dirt was their insulation and shingles. So this was a dirt roof cabin.
So when you pick up one of these, first you got to locate it, then somebody has to offer it to you, then you got to go get it. What do you do? Number the logs so
Yes.
you can put it? You take it apart and number them so you can put it back together.
Yeah, we numbered the logs. This particular one, by the time we got here, they were all washed off, the numbers.
Oh,
You know how the rainstorms are around here.
oh man.
So luckily I had detailed pictures of all 4 sides. And I could look at a picture and see the characteristics of each log and see exactly how it went together.
I'll be darned.
Because it only fits one way.
Yeah, that was smart. It's a good thing you did that because you'd still be putting this thing together if
Yeah.
you didn't.
Yes.
And of course, there's a bathroom in here, you know, with all the amenities, and of course that wouldn't have been here in
No.
the old cabin.
This outside, this would have been outside, this little outhouse.
Yeah, this piece here, right? Okay.
Now this was a doorway back there. I filled it in.
Back here.
And, you know, 5 years after I put this up, I had the thought to look on the back and see if there was ever a lean-to on the back of this. And you can see where it was nailed to the back.
And there was a lean-to.
Which was probably the kitchen.
Yeah.
So it was bigger than this.
This is the Danielson cabin,
Yes.
and this of course is a completely different style.
Yes,
It's
it's
a
all hewed by hand, so it's like a block style, block logs, and then it's got different corner joints, which are half dovetail joints.
How old would you say this cabin is?
It's about the same age as that one. It was in the Wyoming homesteads. It's in the late 1890s.
1890s. Okay, and it was built in Wyoming.
Yes.
And how did you come by it?
I was looking at some old barns, and this one was by a barn, and it was covered with siding, so I didn't know it was a cabin. And Marvin Danielson said, "There's a cabin down there," and he says he wanted very little for it, $250.
Yeah.
And he said, "That's a log cabin." And so we came back and we disassembled it. It was covered with siding and lath and plaster on the inside, so we could not see any logs.
Yeah, yeah. You were pleasantly surprised when you pulled all that off
Yes.
there, weren't you? Can we go in?
Sure.
All right. You love your bunk beds, don't you? That
My
really.
son built almost all the beds.
Your son did.
Yes.
Good for him. Wow.
He helped me build most of the cabins, and then the town got too small for him. So
So he'll be back. He'll be back
Yeah,
someday.
I hope
And so the exposed, not for the inside, the exposed logs here. Could the Danielsons have seen those, or did they cover those?
no,
up as
they
well?
had all these lath and fern strips, and it was totally covered and painted, decorated. Had a wood burning stove right there. This was their kitchen,
Okay, the stove was here.
and
Okay.
that was the bedroom, and that's all there was.
This small area was the kitchen, and back here was their bedroom, and of course you still use it for that. You've added, once again, you've added a little privy or something that
Yes.
houses the bathroom.
And this is, you can see where the wall was. It's cut into the wall there.
Oh, sure, yeah. You can see the cuts right behind the television set. You can see where and they did have a wall that separated the two rooms, huh?
Yes.
Oh, I see.
Now this was Mary Danielson. She lived in here with her
let me
husband,
hold
Fred
that.
Lewis,
Okay.
and two of their children were born in this cabin. This is one of these children.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just full of history. It's got a lot of histories and stories connected to it, which we put on the website, a lot of those stories. A lot of Indian stories. And
These people, not just these people, but the people in Wyoming and Utah in the West in the 1850s to 1890s, they had encounters with Indians all the time, didn't they?
all the time. And the Indians used to come to these people, and they'd give them sweets, which they weren't accustomed to, and they enjoyed them. So they come back all the time, and they became good friends. So there's lots of Indian stories. There's a cliff not far from this cabin, very close, and a large cliff, and they used to drive the buffalo off the cliff, and Charles Danielson used to watch them do that. And actually, this was the bedroom. Mary walked in here at one time, and the baby was sleeping on the bed, and on the bed there was a rattlesnake coiled up. So she came in with a shotgun, shot the rattlesnake while the baby was sleeping.
My goodness.
And that's some,
But that baby
some of the
wasn't
stories
sleeping
they
very
passed
long.
down, you know, that were a lot of stories. Like one of the Danielsons left on their horse to go to Pocatello because he was in love with a girl there. So he packed up his bags and his dog, and that's a long ways. I don't know, 200 miles or whatever, and rode his horse there. Got there and decided to get married, so they took the coach to Ogden. And then they decided to go homestead, so they went back to Wyoming. But the horse and dog got left in Wyoming. And 2 years later, the horse and dog appeared back to the homestead.
Wow.
So that's one of the stories.
Dave, these cabins, even though they date from about the same time, and we're looking at another 1890s cabin here from Wyoming, the styles are real different. I mean, they don't look anything alike.
Yeah, they're totally different. Built by people that came from different countries. So the corner notchings are usually different. This is a B style, there's Swedish style, all the different styles. There's a lot of styles.
What's the name of this cabin?
This is the Farron cabin.
Farron.
The Farrons lived it. They lived in it and had built it.
In Lyman, Wyoming,
Lyman,
I think you
Wyoming.
said. They built it and they lived in it and they raised a number of generations here, didn't they?
Yes.
Yeah. You were showing us how you know that this was built by a hatchet. They used a hatchet to build this.
Well, you can see at the end of the logs, you know, the axe or hatchet that cut the logs, and then they squared this one off because they had a fence post attached to it.
You mean right here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And but all the other logs are hatchet ends, you know. A lot of cabins like this one was made with a saw, you know.
Right. You can see where a circular saw had probably a circular saw, right? Or maybe one of these, huh?
Yeah, hand saw.
A hand saw. Yeah. And back to this one again. Now you talked about having to number the logs. They had to do it too. Point that out for us.
Yeah, they numbered the logs just so. I don't know if this one was built up in the timbers where they got the timbers from, or if it was built, if they hauled the timbers down and built it, and possibly sometimes they would move and they would number their cabins and take it with them. Take it apart.
Right. So this may have been done after it was already up. They're disassembling it, and they put those hatchet marks in it so they know 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yes.
Interesting. Can we go inside?
Sure.
I'll follow you.
Oh, this. I thought they checked out of here, and they didn't.
Oh, okay. Well, we won't
We can
stay
show it to
long.
you.
We won't stay long. Now, we could see that these logs, of course, look different. These are
Now
they've
this
been
cabin,
painted white, or
yes, I whitewashed it because this is the only cabin that only has one window and it's so dark, and they pretty much whitewashed all of them. And then they'd cover them up, of course, but it didn't take so many candles to keep them lit at nighttime. And so we whitewashed it to help make it a little brighter in here.
Would this have been a 2-room cabin, a kitchen
This
and a
was a
bedroom?
one-room cabin.
One room.
Yes.
Well, Dave, this one we're staying in front of now, of course, you have a great interest in this one because this is where you and your wife and your daughter live, right?
Yes.
Okay, so you live right on the premises here. You're the resident managers of this little community.
Yes.
This is not a lot of space for 3 people in the year 2010. You're living like they used to live in the 1850s and 60s.
Yeah, and we really enjoy it. And we enjoy it. There's just my 9-year-old daughter, my wife and I, and we. It's easy to keep clean, and it's very warm and comfortable. That's all we need.
Yeah. What's the name of this cabin?
This is the Moses Martin Sanders, John Sanders cabin.
John Sanders cabin. This is from Utah?
Yes.
In 1859. This is one of the older ones that you have.
It's built in 1859.
Uh-huh.
The Sanders were sent to southern Utah, well, basically central Utah, where they built this cabin. It was built right shortly after they got there, and they built this cabin and lived in it for a short time. And then they moved to a town called Fairview, which is right by this cabin. And he actually had 2 wives. Each wife had 14 children, all born in Fairview. So it's got a lot of history, and a lot of families, a lot of people lived in this since they moved out. So there's got a lot of history connected to this.
And you got an opportunity when you were in Utah to talk to a woman who was born and grew up in this house. And you found out that this wasn't always a house. I mean, it sort of had a unfortunate development. It became a chicken coop, I guess, didn't it?
Yeah, when the McKeans moved out, they used it for a chicken coop. And so I guess for many years it was a chicken coop.
Yeah, yeah. But now it's the Hartle homestead, huh?
Yes.
Okay.
We sanded the logs, and they're very nice looking logs. They're white pine, and makes a very good home.
Yes, it does. Well, Dave, your community's growing. The Howells cabin is under construction. You're
Yes.
putting it back together, huh?
I'm finally getting to it.
How long have you had it?
I've probably had it about 6 years in a storage unit.
And the Howells lived where?
They lived in Sanpete County, Utah, central Utah.
Okay. And so you're in the process of putting this back together. I see you've got the floor down. Interesting that in the back here, it looks like you've got a second cabin adjoining this one. And it even looks older than this cabin.
Yeah, the Howells lived in here. Their 5 or 6 kids were born in this little tiny cabin and lived in here. Later, they added an addition on the back of it, which was timbers from Fort Fairview. They were pretty rough shape. We found a cabin the same exact size, so we added that cabin to the back.
I see. Okay, so you're going to have the same living space that the Howells had, but the addition will be a different cabin. Okay. Can we go in and see where you are in the process of putting this together here? Okay, this is the original cabin.
It's pretty wet in here. We had a bad rainstorm, and there's no roofing on this.
Right.
cabin.
So yeah. Well, you're far from finished, but it looks like you're coming along pretty good. And in here, this is the addition, and you were able to find. I still get a kick out of that. You're able to find a cabin the exact same size as the addition they put on there. So you just
Off the
decided
Van
to use
Fleet
it.
Ranch. Yes, we did.
Okay, now this is interesting. People have always heard the word chinking, I think, and that's the material that goes between logs.
Yes.
This is what's under the chinking. Tell us what you're up to here.
Well, typically, pioneers would chink it. They'd get the clay from their wells, and they'd add sagebrush, all kinds of stuff, grass. A lot of times, cow manure, and it seemed to work the best, and it stayed in there the longest. They'd have to chink between the logs to fill in the gaps and spaces. Otherwise, the winter snow is going to blow right through.
Sure.
So we do it differently. We shoot the foam in there, and then
Insulation.
I had a guy working
and you
on
see
here.
some of that sticking out here. That sort of sticks out when you compress it.
Yes, Dell Williams put all these in here yesterday. So these are cut on a bevel, on a table saw. And so he would shoot these staples this way and this way after he shot the foam in there. And then we'll come along after we seal these logs up, because we sanded them. And then he'll come along and put a thin layer of synthetic chinking, which comes in any color or texture. And it seals it up and looks really good.
So you're not still using cow manure. You're using something from Ace Hardware or something
Yes.
like that. Okay.
And the outside, of course, we do differently.
Here's a good example, Dave, of the outside, which part of this has been chinked, which is down here. You can see that that's finished up. That's hard as concrete there. Up here is where your insulation is still showing through, I guess.
Yeah. So what we'll do is we'll get a hock and we mix mortar and lime and all this stuff together.
Mm-hmm.
It's just basically sand mix
Uh-huh.
and mortar, and we'll trowel it in here really tightly. But all these little staples here, it has something to grab and
And that
stay in
holds
there.
it, huh? Yeah.
And we cut these logs ahead of time on an angle with a chainsaw, and then we took them back down, cut a V out of them.
Mm-hmm.
So the chinking, the mortar will actually go up in there, so the water has to shed, and so they'll stay completely dry, and they'll stay in there a long time.
Well, Dave, you've only got one log cabin that comes from Illinois.
Yeah.
We're looking at it.
This is it. This is it. I'm really excited about it.
And where did you find it?
We found it down by Pittsfield, right by a little tiny town called Detroit, just south of there. And it was given to us, and we took all the siding off. It had 2 layers of siding. The first one was cedar, which kept it preserved. The fireplace over there had lots of door openings because they kept adding additions to it. And it's an old 1839,
Wow.
1840 cabin.
That's pretty old for that part of the state, isn't it?
Yes.
There wasn't not a lot going on there in 1840. That's interesting. It's not going to stay here, is it?
No, we got to put up the foundation over here. Once the foundation is up, then we'll take it apart and start erecting it over there. It'll have a lot of steel reinforcing and all thread and screws and bolts in
Yeah.
it. And
It's going to be good for it to get it off the ground, isn't it?
yes, it's really hard on it sitting out like this, and I'll be glad to get it over there.
And what's your plan for it? What do you want to use it for?
Well, we were going to, use it for part of the hotel here, but now I think we're going to make a museum, the early church history museum out of it.
So you have somebody who has a lot of historical artifacts? and
Don Black
documents and-
has been collecting artifacts, Joseph Smith artifacts, early church history, all kinds of things related to Nauvoo, and so he's gonna fill this up, and it's really fun, interesting stuff. So it'll be a museum. It'll be a free museum. They'll just get to come here and go through the museum.
Well, you know, that'll be really neat because that'll actually bring people out here
Yes, it will.
to take a look at what you got here.
That's what we're hoping to.
Yeah, yeah. Neat. Well, Dave, of all the cabins, you like them all because you have your loving attention in each one, but this is kind of your favorite, isn't it? The Stephen Nixon cabin.
I think it's pretty much my favorite.
Yeah. He was born in 1807. He built this in 1859, and again, this was in Utah, wasn't it?
Yes.
Why do you like it so much?
A lot of it because of the history. He came from England, and he joined the church in England, served the mission there, and came here and met Joseph Smith the day he got here. It was a courthouse. It's had
Really? After he lived in it, it was a courthouse?
After he moved out, they turned it into Summit County, Utah's first courthouse.
Really?
And the minutes of the court minutes and the judges are all in one ship where this came from in their courthouse.
And this is really well built, but you've had to add a little bit to this because the second floor was a sleeping loft that you really couldn't stand up in, so you expanded it somewhat, didn't you?
Yeah, we needed room for the staircase, headroom, so we put about 4 rounds of logs in there to make it a little taller than what it was. And so I hate to modify it, but it made it very nice. So
Yeah.
it sleeps 8 people upstairs.
It's really nice. You have guests in there, so we can't go in, but it looks very comfortable.
It
Yeah.
is. We actually lived in here for a little while too, and we really enjoyed it.
Well, Lori, you and your husband have been in this business for a while, and you're his partner on making this thing work. You clean and you take care of the customers. You don't build log cabins, though, right?
No,
No.
no, he gets to
However,
do that.
This is your biggest lodging right here, and this is a log cabin, although it's not old. Yeah, you used to live here.
Yep.
It's pretty comfortable.
Yes.
It's nice.
Yes.
Look at the size. I love this. Look at this.
Yep.
That's a massive thing. So this is not going to fall
It's-
over anytime
yep.
soon, is it?
Nope, it's beautiful.
And I think we just got to look at your daughter Sage over there and friend Shawnee. So that she's home for lunch. I wanted to just take a look at this inside because, like I said, this is one of the places that's available to the people that come here to stay. Even though it's not old, it's a big, massive log cabin, and it's the first one you lived in. And we get a chance to look at the kitchen, but I think what's cool is if we can go upstairs and look at some of the appointments going up. Can we do that?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
let's head up that way. Everything in here is wood.
Yep.
No, you got a lot. You could sleep like, what, 10 people in here? And,
13.
13, and one of the lucky ones gets a covered wagon.
Yep.
There's a mattress.
Yeah, the
in
kids
here,
love
which I
it.
get a big kick out of. There's even a mattress under the wagon, so if you want to sleep, it's like a bunk bed. If you want to sleep under the wagon, you can do that. But isn't that a nifty way to use an old wagon? That is so neat.
Yep.
And you guys can't get enough of log cabins, because as we walk down this way, you've got one of your rooms. You've roomed off one of your bedrooms, which is a great idea.
Yep. When Dave told me he was going to do this, I said no, and he says, I promise it'll look good. And it did.
It looks great.
It looks great.
Let's come back here too, because this is,
This is the kids' room,
oh, neat.
and it has a loft up there.
So you got your bunk beds here, a bed for two there, and up above us here is a loft. And
With a
I guess
bed.
you can sleep another couple up there.
Yep.
And again, wood everywhere. I wonder how many.
Dave
board
did it
feet-
all.
He did.
All this.
Did he
all the
really?
yeah, he did it all.
Oh, he's something. He is something. This community is growing all the time. It's up to 7 cabins now. The 8th one will be a museum. There are 5 more in storage that Dave Hartle says when he gets around to it, he'll continue to assemble. With another Illinois Story in Nauvoo, I'm Mark McDonald. Thanks for watching.
For a DVD copy of this episode of Illinois Stories, send $19.95 to Network Knowledge, P.O. Box 6248, Springfield, Illinois 62708. Be sure to include the program name, broadcast date, and topic. You may also order with your credit card by calling 800-232-3605 or by using our secure server by going online to networkknowledge.tv.